Okay, very frustrating, right? You watch all the reviews on the juiced Rip Racer or any other juiced vehicle, and you see raving things about it, and people do speed tests, and they show you what you want to know, like unlocking it, blah blah blah. You hear everything you want to hear, and they're telling you everything you want to hear. Except they don't tell you the most important thing, which is that the bike squeals out of the box, and there's no mention of it. So unless you are on Facebook groups and you see and you read about actual owners having real experiences with it, if all you're doing is research on YouTube and watching those reviews with that happen to have affiliate links on the bottom, then you're not getting the real story and the full understanding. Okay, I'm not saying that the juice bike is not good. I'm not saying it's a headache, but well, kind of. But the brake thing was very disappointing, and luckily there's a solution, and we're going to be talking about that. But it's more disappointing than anything else that reviewers are hyping this up and not mentioning the one thing that we need to know that we wouldn't be asking otherwise, and that's the brake squeal. So reviewers, get with it. We see through to you. If you're not telling us about stuff like that and all you're doing is telling us all the great stuff, then it's not a real review, is it? Yes, I did everything we were told to do. I cleaned the rotors with alcohol. I cleaned the pads. I sanded the pads. I filed down the sides of the pads. None of it worked. And it took me like 3 hours-ish to run all the research and try everything and running tests and finding out they don't work, and then now we're down to this. So we're replacing the pads with resin pads, and these are made by Shimano, and Shimano ones have the standard size, but the caliper that we have on the Rip Racer, one side of the caliper does not fit the standard size of the brake pad. So the brake pad does need to be shaved down, and we're gonna see this through the middle of the video. All right, I'm gonna show you how to change the brake pads without removing the rear wheel. When you put the caliper back on, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna remove the caliper, but once you put it back on, you do need to realign it, but don't worry, it's not gonna be as hard as you think. We're gonna go ahead and do that now. Before we do that, I'm just gonna go over what this is. This is called a cotter pin. It keeps the brake pads, these two gold things, in place. That silver thing in the middle is a spring that basically pushes the pads out towards the outside of the caliper. We're gonna remove this screw and this screw. In one of the videos, I think the juiced video actually shows you to remove that screw, but that might be an older model or different caliper type. If you have the Rip Racer and you're looking at this Logan caliper, then you're not gonna wanna touch that. You're gonna remove only this and this. It does have a washer here, so just wanna make sure you don't lose that washer. Okay, because there's not a lot of clearance due to this bar here, we're gonna use an L-shaped Allen wrench just to get more clearance. Okay, because it is so tough to do because it's really screwed on tight there, I'm using this just to create some leverage, but if you have some sort of pipe or something to get here to extend the lever arm, you're gonna have to use this to create some leverage to loosen the screw there. Okay, so remove that nut. Now with those two screws removed, this thing should slide right off, which it does. And we're gonna pull these gold things out. All right, it's important to note that between the bottom of this plate here and the bracket is a washer. So don't lose that, okay? There's gonna be a washer here, another washer here. Before we remove the pads, there's a cotter pin. That's what this guy is. And so this whole thing needs to slide out. In order to do that, we have to bend this back straight. I'm gonna use these pair of pliers. This thing slides out. Just slide that out. This is how it looks like. There's gonna be the pads that sit on this spring here. The spring is just, it's not a normal, cylindrical spring. It's just basically a V-shaped thing with a little field goal. So the field goal goes on the edge like that. And then it pinches together. So we're gonna replace this with the new pads. So what we're looking at here is the new pad, the Shimano's. That's the part number. And then this is the old pad. Okay, the old pad comes with a cotter pin like this, where you can see that taller part is much taller than here. For here, it sticks out only just a little bit. So it's a lot harder to bend this one. So I'm gonna reuse the old one. This one that came off of this, I'm gonna match it with the new set. And then I'm gonna ignore the new cotter pin. Make sure you're not touching the inside of the pads that touch the rotors. You don't wanna contaminate that. So these pads are much, I don't wanna say much bigger, but they are a little bit wider, ever so slightly. So it's gonna be a tighter fit. So just be patient with it and make sure you get a good fit. Otherwise, you're gonna force stuff and stuff's gonna bend and it's not gonna be a good thing. So make sure you just take your time in fitting this in. The pistons, which are this metal ring here, and on the other side is a metal ring. And when you engage the brake, those metal rings push the brake pads together. So what happens is if you look right here, ever so slightly, it's sticking out a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a screwdriver, or you can use basically any tool, and you're gonna push that down flat on both sides. Because every little millimeter counts, because the pads are gonna be very close to the rotor. And to give yourself as much clearance as possible, we're going to push those pistons back in, flush to its housing. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So you can see the bottom one is seated correctly, but the top one, there's a little gap up here. You can't see, there's a gap here compared to the other side, which is flush. It may be hard to capture on camera, but in person, it is not perfect. I'm not gonna be able to show you this on camera because I need to be able to see it myself. But basically you wanna make sure the pads are parallel to each other. Right now it's closer on this side than it is on the back side. So this is not as easy as people show online. If you're getting frustrated watching me do this, I hear ya. I am not enjoying this either. So I'm gonna sand down this edge and this edge. Because what happens is where it's sitting in here, this side is perfect, but this side is too tight. And it's just a quality issue with the Logan. Do not do the step. Sanding in this manner did not work. Very frustrating. I did have to end up using a Dremel tool to basically shorten the width of the brake pad. Okay, so that it would seat in here correctly. So now you see the gap in there is parallel, is equal on both sides. So this is how it should seat nicely. It should just slide in there comfortably without much stress. But unfortunately, the caliper itself, this side is tighter than this side. And so again, there's probably nothing wrong with the Shimano pads, it's just the caliper has poor quality control. So hopefully Juiced can choose new components for their future rip racers and not have to deal with this issue, and use resin pads, of course. Now we're gonna put the cotter pin back in place. Let's wiggle that in. The reason I'm sharing this is so that if you experience frustration doing it, then you know that you're not the only one. It does take some time. There we go, cool. So now we're gonna bend that back in place like we did before. Bend this down. Okay, recall we have those washers, but we're gonna put one here and one up there, and then basically mount that back on. Keep it kind of loose, okay? We want the caliper to be able to move like this. Tighten it so that all the threads here are no longer exposed. Okay, so now the screws are on, the washers are sandwiched in between, and the caliper moves. As we engage the rear brake, the caliper will sit where it needs to sit, and then we're gonna tighten that. So having a friend or long arms would make this a lot easier, but I don't have a friend or long arms at the moment, so we're just gonna do it ourselves. So I'm engaging the brake now with my left hand, and with my right hand, I'm gonna tighten these. So what that does is it makes sure that the caliper is on parallel, perfectly parallel to the rotor. So now the caliper is parallel with the rotor. It's gonna be hard to see or capture on camera. We're gonna try to see that here. And that is the completion of the brake pad change without removing the rear wheel. So it completely sucks that with a brand new bike out of the box with not even a few miles on it, from the very beginning the bike squealed and you gotta spend 15 bucks and probably an hour of your time. And luckily, well, hopefully you don't have to research as much as I did and try as many methods that did not work as much as I did to get it done. So hopefully this video helped you and you can have a bike that is squeak free.